there'll be fairness, but the time for discretion, the time for accepting some of this behaviour is over.
Do you think one of the reasons we're in this problem is not enough people have complied with the rules, and is it time for tougher restrictions?
Well, as I said, as I said, I'll have more to say about fines and penalties and enforcement soon. Today's not the day for that. But anyone going out and breaking that curfew, you run the risk of being caught, you run the risk of being fined, and we always reserve the right not just to fine you on the spot, but to take you to court, and then it's not $1,652, it's actually $10,000. So this will be over sooner if everyone does the right thing, everyone plays the part that they have to play. Again, I know I've said it many, many times, I don't want the selfishness of some to detract from the amazing work that the vast majority of Victorians are doing. I'm deeply grateful to each of you, but these steps are the ones we have to take. These are the decisions I've made, because anything short of this will not keep us safe. Anything short of this will see this drag on for months and months and months. That is not acceptable to me. Having to stand here every day reporting more and more people dying, we need to come down on this hard. This is what this strategy is all about. We've avoided the worst case scenario. Now we have to get to that COVID normal, and we have to get there as quick as we possibly can.
We've heard several times last week that this kind of lockdown might not necessarily work because of the transmission that was happening in essential industries.
And that's why we'll have more to say. Well, a couple of points. We'll have more to say about those industries and the way in which they'll have to operate. And as I said, there'll be some that can continue. There'll be some that will have to reduce the amount of work they do, the amount of output, therefore the amount of workers, and therefore the amount of risk. And then there'll be others that will close, just as other businesses have moved to working from home. That will not be easy. Today's not the day for that. We'll have all of that finalised, and we need to. There's a lot of national issues at play here as well, because obviously we have the biggest container port in the country. What gets turned off here will have a direct impact right across the nation, and indeed right across the region and the world when it comes to issues of export and the like. So it is quite a complex task, and one that we'll be able to talk to in more detail tomorrow. The other point I would make is that number of mystery cases, that number of community transmission cases has steadily grown. It is now at an unacceptably high level, and that's why the advice has changed, that if we don't take these steps, then we're just going to see more and more cases. That may mean that our strategy doesn't work at all, even if you were to wait 5 or 6 months. So when faced with that choice, more is needed. If this is not enough, we need to do more. And once you get that advice, that's exactly the tough decisions that you have to make.
Some of these industries, advertising networks, will obviously be under increasing uncertainty today. Have you sort of finalised the decisions on which industries will be shut down?
No, there's still further work going on, and that will be concluded as soon as it possibly can be. As I just said, it's not as simple a task as it might seem. There are very detailed supply chains. There is a good deal of complexity to this issue. It is better to take a little bit longer to get it right. These changes won't come into effect until Wednesday at the earliest. So on that basis, we do have a little bit more time to engage to make sure that we've got it as close to right as it can ever be. There'll always be grey areas. There will always be challenges as we go in the days after we make these announcements. But getting this right is really important to us, and that's why we're engaged with the Commonwealth Government, with the National Coordination Mechanism, with the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, all of our government departments. It's an important process to make sure everyone has a line of sight and knows what the implications of each and every decision we make are.
13 or 14. Firstly, do you envisage that we'll go back to stage 3 restrictions then? And secondly, how likely is it that we could get on top of that sooner?
Well, 6 weeks is the time that is necessary. If everyone plays their part, then there is some prospect that we could achieve our outcome before then, but I'm not making any commitments on that. I'm not for a moment suggesting that if we got to a certain threshold, we'd be able to go back to these restrictions prior to me standing up today, or another level. Ultimately, we'll have to be, just as we always have been, guided by the data, the evidence, the numbers, and the detailed analysis of those numbers. Again, the notion of 700 perhaps doesn't seem a very high number in the context of some of the numbers we've had to report, some of the challenges we've had to describe and deal with. But that many mystery cases where we just can't track back who you got it from, how, when, that's when it's really, really challenging. And what that says to you is that if there's that many mysteries that you know about, how many cases don't you know about? And that's when you've got to take an abundance of caution and say, look, let's extinguish this. Let's get this to the point where it's down to a very small number, a manageable number, and that's the advice to me, and that's the decisions we've taken.
Cases. I mean, should we see that as a failure of contact tracing, or is it a capacity being overrun?
I think volume is the friend of no system. If you've got this many cases, if you've got this much community transmission, for whatever reason, then it really gets very, very difficult to put your arms around and to contain the sorts of numbers we're seeing. Now, is it running wild? No, we're not seeing thousands of cases a day, but the best we could hope for if we didn't make these decisions, if we didn't make these changes, if I ignored the advice rather than following it, would be that we might get ourselves into a low number in 4, 5, 6 months' time. That, I think, is just not a feasible option, and that's why when your current settings clearly are not enough and you've got advice to change, that's when you have to do more, and that's exactly what I've done.
Given that we have widespread community transmission, I guess, will you allow asymptomatic people who aren't contacted by contact tracers to get tested now?
We've had many discussions about asymptomatic testing. There's only so much testing capacity that you have on any given day, and the reward for effort is very, very low. We have done asymptomatic testing where the medical experts deem that that's an appropriate thing to do in a high-risk workforce, for instance. You'll recall we did asymptomatic testing of many thousands of teachers. We've done many asymptomatic tests as a result of our outbreak policy and trying to respond to those outbreaks. We've got no announcements to make about changes to the testing protocol. I would just say again, if you're sick, you need to get tested. That's the most important thing to do. In fact, it's the only thing to do, and we'll get you your result as fast as possible. And in the interim, you have to stay at home while you wait for the result. And if you're positive, you have to be at home. I'll have more to say tomorrow about enforcement. I'll have more to say tomorrow about a big boost to that door-knocking program. It's already very substantial, but it's going to go to an entirely new level, and that'll mean that we've got greater confidence that people are where they should be and are doing what they should be doing.
Will we need a bigger force to police these changes, though? Are you foreshadowing that?
Well, night network will no longer run. The after curfew public transport timetable will be but a fraction of the services that it is now, and that will free up some additional resources. The state of disaster provisions allow us to see police playing all sorts of different roles, but particularly, say, as an authorised officer, not just a sworn member of Victoria Police. I can confirm for you that I'm having discussions with the Prime Minister. I've made some requests of him in relation to additional ADF personnel and additional clinical staff, and I'll be able to update you on the details of those requests most likely tomorrow.
Would you use those personnel as part of checking on curfew as well?
Yes.
Would you consider putting this on the street?
Well, we have many hundreds of ADF personnel currently assisting with roadblocks, stopping people from Metropolitan Melbourne unnecessarily travelling into regional Victoria and vice versa. They're working side by side with Victoria Police. You see foot patrols in this precinct, in many different parts of the city. They're doing a fantastic job. It's a very strong partnership, one that will need to be enhanced, and it will be. I think that the main point where you'll see additional ADF presence will be in doing that door knocking side by side with an authorised officer from the Department of Health. That door knocking is very important, to make sure people are where they should be and are doing what they should be doing.